We're starting verse 16. I say again, let no one think of me as a fool. If otherwise, at least receive me as a fool, that I also may boast a little. What I speak not according to the Lord, but as it were foolishness in his confidence of boasting. See that many boast according to the flesh. I also will boast. For you put up with a fool gladly, since you and yourself are wise. But if you put up with it, if one brings you into bondage, if one devours you, if one takes you from it, if one exalts himself, if one strikes you on the face, to our shame, I say that we were weak for that. But in whatever anyone is bold, I speak foolishness, I am bold also. Here's Paul. And he starts out, is this you're not supposed to be boasting, are we? When we're talking about, when we're living for the Lord, we're not supposed to boast what he did, are we? So he's saying, these guys are coming in. They're boasting. And he goes, you guys are listening to them. He says, let me tell you a little bit about myself. He says, I'm going to boast, but I don't want to boast. I'm going to tell you about myself, even though I know it's not right. But I am going to boast. But mine is going to be because of the Lord, not because of what these other guys are doing. Because other guys are coming in. They're like, well, we're stronger than you and everything. And he'll start covering some of this in verse 20. In verse 21. To our shame, I say that we were weak for that. But in whatever else is bold, I speak foolishness, as I am bold also. He didn't come in and speak about himself. He wasn't bold about what was going on. Because what these other guys would do, they'd come in and they would come in and tell you about all the stuff they knew and everything. And they expected everybody to look up to them, take care of them, wait on them hand and foot. And people did that. And Paul didn't do that. So he goes in verse 22. Are they Hebrews? So am I. So wait a minute. They say they're Hebrews. Okay, but he's a Hebrew too, isn't he? So they're the same there, aren't they? Are they Israelites? So am I. So they're telling them they're Israelites, but he is too. So are they of the seed of Abraham? So am I. Well, all were seed of Abraham, and he was too. So there wasn't any really difference there, is there? Are they ministers of Christ? I speak as a fool. I am more in labor, more abundant, in stripes, above measures, in prison more frequently, in death often. From the Jews 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. So he starts talking about himself, right? He says, my labor abounds. He says, I've been in prison for it. So he's been in prison for doing what he's speaking, right? Speaking. His life has been threatened. Death. And then he says, from the Jews, I got 5 times I received 40 stripes minus 1. So he's been whipped 5 times, 39 lashes. So he's been whipped 195 times. Remember back then when you were whipped, it was a whip with glass in it, metal in it, rocks in it.
Long.
So it ripped your whole back apart, didn't it? So just imagine if he would take his shirt off. Does he have the scars to show it?
Yes.
He's gone through all this stuff. I mean, he's been beaten. I mean, he's the same as all that, but now he's starting to say, these are the physical things they've done to me. I've actually suffered for this. I'm not just going there and just saying what I'm saying. 3 times I was beaten with a rod. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked at night and day. I have been in deep journey often, in pearls of water, in pearls of robbery, in pearls of my own countrymen, in the pearls of the Gentiles, in the pearls of the city, in the pearls of wilderness, in the pearls of the sea, in the pearls among false brethren. So, he's been beaten by rod. He's been stoned and left to be dead, wasn't he? That's what it says. And he only mentions 3 of the shipwrecks. He was actually in 4. And he's saying, you know, he's been through storms. He's been through robberies. I mean, he's been through a lot of stuff, hasn't he? But he's still preaching the gospel, isn't he? These other guys, like I was saying, they're coming in. They're looking for money from the people. They're looking for the best food. They're looking for they're getting really praised for what they're doing. He's saying, look, I haven't always been praised. I've been beaten. I've been almost dead. I came to life. It's funny because as Christians, if you die as a Christian, is it that bad of a thing? Because what do? We go to heaven. So for him to say, you know, I've been beaten to death, he knows he's better to go to heaven than he is here. So as a Christian, you don't have to worry about your life as much. I mean, we worry, but we know where we're going, don't we? Mm-hmm. And then he says up here in 27, in weariness and toils, in sleepiness often, in hunger and thirst, in fasting often, in cold and nakedness. Beside the other things, what came upon me daily, my deep concern for the churches. So he's been out. He's been toiled. He's been sleepless. He's been hungry. He's done all that. He's been cold. He's been naked. But what is he worried about? Is he worried about his own life? No. Because he starts in verse 37. He says, comes upon me daily. My deep concern is for all the churches. So his concern is for the churches. His concern isn't for his own life. He's worried what's going to happen with the churches that are going to preach the gospel, isn't he? He's turned his concern for that more than anything. And he says in verse 29, who is weak, and I am not weak? Who is made to stumble, and I do not burn with indignation? If I must boast, I will boast in these things which concern my infirmities. For God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who is blessing forever, knows that I am not lying. So he starts out, you know, he didn't want to tell them all this stuff. But he has all these guys coming in and giving them false doctrines. So he's saying, you know, if I boast, he's not doing this boasting because he wants to boast about what he's been through. He's boasting because he wants to make them realize he is speaking the real truth. Because you can have people come in and just change little things and give you a different gospel, can't they? Last year we did the Christmas story. It really makes you realize what the little things they've added in it aren't really in the Bible. Doesn't that make you realize how fast a pastor can change things around? Because when you go through that Christmas story, and they are tricky, but it's not what's in the scriptures, is it? And when you ask somebody other questions, like how many wise men there was, what do they all say? 3 wise men. All it says is there's 3 gifts. So you just take little things and turn them around, and that's easy. And when you do that Christmas story, it makes you really, really realize how fast this can happen. And during the Christmas season, I always do it with the kids, and I don't think yet There hasn't been any of them get 100%, and we've done it every year. I mean, it's funny because they're all excited. They're like, "Oh, this is easy." And then when we go through it, it's completely different what they expect. But this is what he's telling us. I mean, his boasting, he's boasting about what God's done. He don't want to boast about everything else. And his thing is, we need to be preaching the gospel and knowing what's going on. And then he says in verse 32, in Damascus, the governor under Artius the king was guarding the city of Damascus with a garrison desired to arrest me. But I was let down in a basket through a window in a wall and escaped from his hands. So he's talking about Damascus where he was let down in a basket to escape the king, Now, how many of these other guys were telling him stuff like that? They weren't going in, they weren't having any problem with kings or anything. As we preach the gospel, what you're going to learn is you're going to have people that are going to persecute you. It could even be family, because they get upset because you're spending more time with the church than you do with them, because you have commitments. You have stuff like, you have people that don't want to be around you anymore because a lot of it comes, they're convicted when they're around you and they see what you're doing. Paul, he was running because he knew what was going to happen. They were after him because a lot of them didn't like him because they didn't like hearing the truth. Sometimes the stuff we tell in the Bible and we say in the Bible is people don't like to hear what you have to say. And we need to be truthful about it. And Paul was just going on here. His big thing is he wants the truth told completely. He says sometimes you're going to have to go through hard things. Hopefully, we'll never know where we stand. If you're in one of these countries that are persecuted, you realize right away, you know where they stand. But here in the United States, how many of us are really persecuted? Our persecution is, we think, well, God didn't answer my prayer when I wanted to, when my car broke down, I needed a new vehicle. I mean, we think of that as being the bad things. But Paul's talking about, he put his life on the line. And for us, where do we stand with our Christian walk? If we know where we're at, and we know the gospel, are we going out and preaching it? Are we willing to tell others about it? Because this is one of the biggest things, because we have to tell the truth in love. And love isn't always telling them the fuzzy good things. Love is telling them what's straight out, what's right and wrong. And we're called to do that as Christians. But we're called to tell it lovingly. That don't mean you're just blown away. You're supposed to tell them about their lifestyle and then, help them. And Paul's saying these other guys are just coming in and giving them warm fuzzy, making them feel good. But he's not doing that. He's coming to preach the gospel no matter what the circumstances. And we're called to do the same. Let's go to prayer.